Hello everyone, and thank you for joining us at a lunchtime webinar about the MBA. We'll be talking about the major differences between the MBA computing and the MBA from Sturt University. I'm joined by Kath, Attree, course director of the MBA and a few other courses, I believe, at CSU, and Martin Hale, the CEO of IT Masters. I'm Guy Coward, the MC for today. So, go through the background of IT Masters, CSU, the MBA, and what we're talking about today. And basically cover the differences between the MBA and the MBA with a computing specialization. The structure of the MBAs, they're a little bit different. There's a lot of different specializations in the CSU specific MBA. And we'll talk about fees and funding options and fast tracking your MBA with credit, as well as what you can expect, during the course of your studies and after your studies, a bit of a return on investment on the MBA. Also, we've got a lot of time for Q&A. If you want to keep asking questions and keep talking about your specific situation, we're more than happy to talk with you. You can do that either in the Q&A section or the chat section on this webinar. We've got it all in front of us, so feel free to jump in. All right, so probably a good time now to introduce Martin. Martin's CEO of IT Masters, as I said, and yeah, he'll take us through the first bit.
So, Guy, they can ask questions via chat during the presentation?
Yeah, absolutely. I'll be looking at it throughout the presentation. They can either use the Q&A section or the chat, and I'll interrupt you if it's particularly relevant.
Yep.
Or maybe wait for a good time to have a Q&A session, probably halfway and perhaps again at the end.
Okay, excellent. Okay, so just some background to the Sturt University IT Masters partnership, and I'll call it a partnership because it feels like a partnership to me. We first approached CSU in January 2002 with a concept of integrating Microsoft certifications within a master, as it turned out to be, in networking and system administration, and specifically aimed at a target audience, which a lot of you will be, but there's a much wider audience now, which is IT pros who are working part-time. They'd like to study online for a whole range of reasons, not least of which they do a fair bit of travel. It's difficult to get to classroom. And most importantly, they wanted something that was current, right up to date, covering the very latest of technologies. So we travelled to Wagga and met with the dean at the time, and he said yes. He's pretty impressed that we come all the way, and he's very impressed that Microsoft had come down as well. And so we got to work, and over the next 12 months built this Masters and then launched it for 2003. We hoped for an intake of 40. We had 242 applications for the first intake, which caused a bit of problems at admissions, I can tell you. They weren't ready for it. And at that time, CSU were the 18th largest provider, according to the government figures, on IT postgraduate in online. And in 2006, we took over as the largest provider. And where are we today, Guy? I think it's in the next slide. Well, it's starting to get a bit embarrassing. We really are dominating the field. I think it's 115% bigger than the next bigger provider, which is Deakin. Obviously got New South Wales, you've got Monash, Edith Cowan. They're the major other players, but we have easily the largest enrolment. That's about half of them. The other half are in what we're going to be talking about, is like the MBA computing and the Master of Project Management, which in the government figures is not recorded in the IT enrolment numbers. So these are all technical people doing cybersecurity, networking, cloud, that type of thing. Thanks, Guy. Why is this important to you? Well, it is. The reasons are because of that type of scale, we have, quite frankly, the funds and the resources to build more and more subjects as over there, and it gives you easily the largest range of IT elective subjects. It's massive, and you'll see the example in the end. There's no other university's got anything like it as far as I've ever found, and it's sort of growing all the time as we add extra to it. One we've just added is digital marketing, for instance, which will add another 4 subjects that you can pick from well, actually it's a bigger pool than 4. It's Australia only MBA which is designed from the ground up for computing professionals, which we've launched, we've redeveloped for this session, the first session in 2020. From, again, what was the ideal, and our research, and Guy had a fair bit to do, is talking to current students and alumni saying what I'd like to have is an MBA on my resume. And I would agree, and I'll show you some numbers later on, the impact on your career of that. But I'd also like to have the latest computing content included in it as well. So a bit of both, and you'll see how we've attempted to do that. And the MBA is about 50-50. It's going to develop your management skills, but it will also continue to develop your technical skills. Or you might be coming the other way. You might be going from management back into technical, which is not uncommon, by the way. So either way, its aim is to develop both sides, but while we're doing that is to give you as much flexibility as we possibly can. Thanks, Guy. Which one should you be looking at? So we're going to cover, Kath's going to cover the MBA, what we call the generic MBA, which, as you'll see, has got a whole range of specializations, but it is not computing focused, whereas the MBA computing is focused, as you'll clearly see when you have a look at the structure of it. So if you're not in IT and you're listening to this, and you've got no intention of moving into IT, the MBA, I'd strongly suggest you have a look. It's got a fantastic range of specializations these days, which is really important to give you flexibility, and a fantastic structure as well. If you're going to move out of IT, you've had enough of IT and you want to move into another area, definitely have a look at the MBA, and you should then line up the specialization in the area you're interested in moving into. And the third category, if you're either in or moving into IT management, the MBA computing, I believe, would be your best bet.
Alrighty, so now's a good time to introduce Kath, course director of the MBA for CSU, as well as a few other courses. And we'll go through the structure here.
Hi everyone. So the general MBA, we'll call it, to differentiate it from the MBA computing, is actually, I would say, Australia's most flexible MBA. And it's flexible in a number of ways. So it's flexible because it has a limited number of core subjects. So if you think about an MBA, basically what it needs to do is give you a broad base of general management. So in our core subjects, we've got contemporary management, we've got marketing, and we've got accounting and financial management. And then we decided that for the strategic side of it, it either look at strategic management, or nowadays, because of the constant changes in our fast, rapidly changing world, sometimes people aren't necessarily managing within an organisation, but they might be managing a startup or managing a new project. So we introduced entrepreneurship project as an alternative to strategic management. And that's it for the, in terms of must do, there's 3, and the 4th one you get to choose. So most other MBAs, you'd have to have at least 6 or 8 that are core that you must do. We then, I'm going to flip to the second column and say, from there, we generally ask you to do 4 subjects from this pool of, I think, 10. And some universities would ask you to put things like economics and corporate finance as compulsory. But my philosophy around that is, what if you're already working in a bank? What if you've already got an economics degree or a finance degree? That's only going to give you a repetition of stuff you already know, and at a very, very fundamental level. So the flexibility around our MBA is to enable you to fill the gaps in your own knowledge. So if you don't understand economics and it's really important for where you're going, then obviously to choose economics as your restricted elective is a good idea. But if you're working primarily with people, then you might be more interested in things like human resource management and leadership. And if you're working in change, then management of change is a no-brainer, and project management would be a highly likely likely thing that you're going to be looking at, because we're all working with projects and in fact we're all working with change. So I think that they're often good options. And then when we're working with people and we're working with suppliers or contractors or whoever, we're often having to negotiate. So we brought in negotiation skills as an option. Some other universities would put international business as a compulsory subject, but not all of us are working in that context. So we don't all need to have everything, you know, along the way. So there's flexibility. You take 4 of that pool of subjects, and we think it covers a reasonable cross-section of the critical management skills that people need, allowing people to fill the gaps of their own knowledge. And then from there, what you can do is take another 4 subjects from a pool of over 100 and not specialise, so just get an MBA, or you can specialise. And specialise, you can do that by taking 4 in a specific area. So accounting and finance is an option. A very popular one for our domestic students is this business analysis, operations and strategy. And that's really looking at where's the direction of the organisation, where it's going, you know, setting the future. So it's a lot of analysis, a bit of risk management, a bit of sort of tools for diagnostics and sort of strategy and forward thinking. We also have a number of principals doing our MBA, because principals are managers of large organisations. And so as for that reason, we've got educational leadership. For those of you that are in startups or are running sections of an organisation that is focused on innovation, then we look at entrepreneurship and leadership, and we include in that things like leading teams. So there's a range of options. Or there are a number of people that are HR professionals that are looking at the MBA, or people from the IT industry that are looking at the MBA, plain leadership, marketing, and our most recent one, which is project management, where we're collaborating again with IT masters, continuing on with our very successful partnership here. The project management subjects are largely taken from the IT masters suite of subjects around project management, and so it really gives you a broad range of things to look at, like project recovery, agile projects, and a range of things. Martin probably remembers all those subjects better than me. We also have a huge number of people working in the public sector in our MBAs. So there is a specialisation on public sector management. And the last one is social impact. So if you care about, you know, the planet and the people that you're working with, then you can take a range of subjects around sustainability, social impact, and aligned to that area. So that's it in a nutshell, what we call the general MBA, but that general MBA has specialisations outside of computing.
So Kath, sorry, the business analysis specialisation you mentioned was popular. Any others that stand out as being popular these days? I'm just interested to see.
Yeah, so the educational leadership obviously only has a small number of people. Yes. Entrepreneurship and leadership is a new specialisation, so I haven't seen a take-up of that, because the business analysis one is a new one as well. I haven't seen a take-up of that as much amongst our domestic students as I have amongst our international students. Yes. The other one, well, project management's only been open this year, so we're not sure. Actually, I've seen a fair few do social impact, which has surprised and encouraged me. And there are a few that do public sector management as well, because that's the industry they're in.
And what sort of percentage of people actually choose a specialisation? Yeah,
so we've made it easier to get a specialisation. So in the past you had to do 4 subjects, and now I've got 4 from 6, because sometimes with sequencing, people might get out of sequence, and then they'd have to wait a whole session before they could do the final subject. So that meant that they just decided, no, I'm just going to do another subject and I won't worry about the specialisation. I would say it's probably 40% that don't and 60% that do.
Cool.
Yeah.
Well, we've got the MBA computing that Martin can talk a lot more about. Is it sort of a similar story with you, about 40-60, or split as to who takes a general one? Or I suppose we're going to find out, aren't we?
There we are, because we have, this is brand new.
Yeah.
Right? So, so it's a redevelop. We had an MBA computing, but it was much more restricted than this. So with Kath's help, we've opened it right up and restructured it. It has 6 core subjects. There's 12 subjects, as you'll see in both of those masters. In this case, instead of 4, we are at slightly less flexible. We've got 6 in there, but a number of them have got a strong IT governance, IT service quality, even within that. And the ITC 571, Emerging Technologies, is what's called a capstone. You do that generally last, and it's a mini research subject. So the concept here, if you're interested in doing your doctorate, is to give you some exposure to research. And obviously, this being the MBA computing, your research would be something in the IT industry. So, but that has been in other courses for quite a while. Very popular, challenging subject, but very, very popular. As I said, a great way to find out if you might want to take the big jump into a doctorate sometime in the future. Then you move on to, as with the MBA, we've got specializations. We've only got 5. You've got 9 or 8.
Yeah, I think so.
Yep. But again, I don't think you'll see, I'm sure you won't see any other university that's got anything like this in terms of IT specializations within an MBA. So cybersecurity, huge, so popular these days. On memory, there's 7 different subjects to pick from there, all full on cybersecurity, lots of labs in them, and mostly wherever possible, as all of these subjects is designed around an industry certification. It'll help you prepare for the certification. If you've already got the certification, you would get credit for the associated subject. So cloud computing, been popular, but not huge. Networking was our mainstream and has dropped down a bit these days. Project management, which is really IT project management, but we've had a number of project managers from all sorts of different areas do it anyway and seem to work quite well. So that is the second most popular, very, very popular. I always say to people, you'll never be out of a job if you can stand the stress and you've got the ability, and it's definitely not me, I can tell you, become a project manager. There's just a heap of jobs out there. And the one we just introduced, which is digital marketing. Fascinating area. I mean, is it IT or is it marketing? And the Australian Computer Society has just acquired 3 of the major industry associations in digital marketing. So I think there's a bit of an answer to that. It's got lots and lots of IT in it these days, and lots of AI, all sorts of things happening there. And then you've got a group A, what they call elective. You've got to choose 2 subjects from that group there. So pretty similar to the MBA, but as I said, a little bit more restricted in terms of, and we've only got when I say only, we've got the MBA. So when you graduate then you would have MBA computing, is it a hyphen or whatever, and then the name of your specialisation. Yeah. Or as Kath said, you can go, okay, I don't want to do a specialisation, there's 4 subjects I want to do, but they're right all over the place. You just get your MBA computing on your testimonial. So I hope that makes sense. Yeah. Thanks, Guy.
Yeah, a lot of the people I talk to are really keen on doing a subject across each of the specialisations because they want a broad range of ideas and knowledge. I'd actually be really interested, folks. There's a question from Picky, by the way. What would be the total max number of subjects you can take in an MBA computing, or just MBA generally? It's 12.
Yeah. So if you want to do more, then just come back and do a grad cert.
Yes.
And we'll give you 50% credit. So you just do 2 more subjects and you get another grad cert. So.
All right, we'll show you what a grad cert is a bit further in, but that would be a great idea.
Yeah. So you could just keep studying, get more and more qualifications.
Yeah, as Sebastian says, bargain. I'd be really interested actually in hearing from you folks listening out there, whether you are interested in specializations, both from the MBA and MBA computing. If you're keen on a particular specialization, we could perhaps talk about that. So yeah, chuck your ideas in there, which one you'd be keen on taking, or whether even you'd be looking at doing a generic one. I'd be super interested. John Branders is interested in the cybersecurity specialization. I talked to a lot of people interested in that one. Yeah, so we'll go through a few of them. Mark.
Okay, just interesting in the cybersecurity one. The way we normally recommend you do that study, by the way, is 1 management subject and 1 IT in parallel on the way through. That seems to work for people better than, but it's up to you, obviously. You pick your subjects, what you want to do.
Yeah, Paul's asking about which industry certifications they're built around. I'll talk about that a little bit later. Yeah, so, but just for example, I saw people interested in project management and cybersecurity, so we could go through a couple of the example specializations.
Okay, sorry, Kath, I don't think I've got these for the MBA, but this is just an example of how specializations work. and it's for both MBAs. So example, project management, maybe you had to choose 4 subjects, and there's your pool to pick from. So that's 8, which is a pretty good pool, and they're all full on project management, I can assure you.
Yeah, program and portfolio management one is one that I'm particularly interested in. It seems a lot more people are sort of taking the next step from project management up to the portfolio management. So that's a really big one.
Yes, it's managing project managers and managing a whole suite of projects. So if it's not stressful enough running your own project, you can manage a whole pool of them. But you do get the very big bucks for it. And cybersecurity, I think I said 7, is actually 8 subjects to pick from there. And again, all full on cybersecurity. All of those have been developed with industry-based experts who actually help us develop the subjects and then deliver them. Okay, go on.
Yeah, you can also see that there's you've got the doing subjects, sort of the pen testing and the hacking countermeasures, those sorts of things, where you actually learn the skills. Or if you're more interested in, I guess, the management and setting the strategy that other people would be implementing, whether they're consulting or whatever, you can sort of go either way, or you can choose to have a selection of both.
So there was a question about, can we just go up? There was a question from Michael.
There was a question from Michael about scheduling.
Okay. So he's asking what's the difference in having a specialisation versus general computing. I think that's up to you. I think that's really about what direction you want to go in and how you think employers will perceive it. So possibly if you're going for a computing type role, having an MBA computing, you can argue I've got the soft people skills, I've got the business skills, and I've got the technical skills. If you're going for a different type of role that doesn't require as many technical skills, then you can argue, well, you know, I've really got the business skills, the finance skills, the people skills, and these are the really important things that I feel I need to bring to this position, because there'll be people reporting to me who'll have the technical skills. So I think it's just all about where you want to go and what your career goals are and how you see yourself.
Yeah, it depends. I mean, if you're aiming to be a CISO, what is it? Information systems, in charge of cybersecurity. Yeah, I'd definitely do a cybersecurity specialisation. If you're aiming to be a specialist IT manager, a generalist IT manager with various people, you should do a mix, in my opinion. And I definitely have MGI 511 project management fundamentals in there, because everything in IT is a project, and you need to be able to speak the speak and walk the talk with them. So depends on what your career goals are, really.
Yeah. Michael, you were talking a bit about scheduling as well. That's where it's just really important that you actually, get your objectives really clear beforehand and talk to us and say, this is what I want to do and this is the time frame I want to do it in. We can really help with actually tailoring a study plan and saying, all right, well, this is when this one runs, this is when this one runs, and they flow on really well together. So really the most important takeaway from this is, if you're keen on studying, just to keep open lines of communication, and we can help you out.
Yeah, Guy, you haven't got much to do. They can email you, is that right?
Yeah, absolutely.
We'll send out it. I'm not kidding there.
Yeah, my details are in this slideshow, which we'll send you out anyway, so you can all chat to me. Or Kath, if you're interested in the MBA.
Somebody was asking about credit, and I'd say generally where we can give credit, we will give credit.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
And we'll go through credit.
Yes, we've got a slide on credit.
But maybe we should go through a couple of subjects, because it's 1:25. Okay,
so here's an example subject from the project management specialisation, which is available in both MBAs, as we saw. Very popular subject, MDI 512. One of the reasons it is very popular is based on what's called the Prince 2 certification. And in the world of project management, there is 2 massive certifications, and one of them is the Prince 2, and the other one is the PMP from the Project Management Institute. Really, especially when you're working in government, almost a must-have on your resume. And this subject not only is a full-blown university subject, it'll help you prepare for that certification. So the content is based on the Prince 2 certification, and as it's changed, and they do regularly, unfortunately, we update the content and keep you studying for the very latest certification. There's learning objectives from it, being a university subject takes you quite a bit further than the actual certification. Now, the certifications are generally a multi-choice, in this case a very difficult exam, but just multi-choice, but you can only test so much in a multi-choice exam, let's face it. Whereas in ours, the assessments, as you'll see, to create a sound business case, well, how would you test that in a multi-choice? But we can and we do. So not only do you know, but can you do? That's the aim of the subjects. And you've got to be able to demonstrate that you can in a simulated business environment.
Well, as Marty always puts it to me, it's the application of the theory in the business context.
Everyone asks, what's the assessment? Don't let this frighten you. We try to ease you in with most of the subjects, and what we do is have what we call a low stakes type, fairly simple assessment at the beginning of the subject. In this case, it's an online article, only worth 15%. And it's got firstly to ease you in. This might be week 4 or 5 in the session. 2 things: it gets you used to your first assessment, but secondly, it gives us a warning if you're struggling, and there's people there to help and discuss whether it be study techniques or schedule or structure and that type of thing. Then there's an online exam, which is very much like the Prince 2 exam, right? So these multi-choice, but it also has short answer questions as well. And then a full-blown, the big assessment at the end. This is this business about can you do? So you need to do a project lifestyle proposal in a simulated environment. Okay, Guy.
Yeah, so let's talk about MGT 501, Contemporary Management, also available in both.
You taught this subject?
Kath? Yeah, so I've actually taught the undergraduate equivalent, and then I've worked very closely with the current lecturers on the development of this subject because it is such a important subject. So this is really, I guess, the introduction subject to the MBA. It takes you through what management is in today's world. So it introduces you to what is management and some of the sort of management theories and practices that have been evolving over time. And you'll recognise some of those in your workplace. You'll be able to kind of identify with some of the things that put forward some of the motivational theories or various leadership theories. So it's really focused on identifying how management operates in that complex, diverse and globalised workplace that we all operate in today. It also takes that developmental approach that you took, so we don't expect you to be a perfectly accomplished postgraduate student from the very get-go. We use an approach in terms of learning that scaffolds you. So the first assessment task will build your skills in a particular area, and like knowledge areas, but skills areas. So we'll train you how to do study and perform and produce assessment tasks at postgraduate level. And then the next assessment task will build on that. You'll get feedback from the first one, and then you'll be able to use that feedback for the second one. So that's when it says research and communicate effectively and professionally. That's what we're training you to do. And we'll also cover on things like sustainability, ethics, innovation, digital disruption as major management challenges in today's volatile, uncertain, complex and ambiguous world.
Yes, some of you might recognise that phrase from the short course we're running at the moment. Being a manager leader in a VUCA world. A couple questions. Does MGT 501 need to be done in the first session?
No, no. And I just say to people, if, for example, you're a project manager and you want to start with something in your comfort zone, then by all means start with one of the project management subjects. If you're a marketer and you want to start in your comfort zone, then start with one of the marketing subjects. Generally, we start people with MGT 501, but that's like got what Martin and Guy were saying. If you talk to us, we can work out a study plan for you. We want you to be comfortable. You can start with Agile if you like, as long as you know what you're getting into and you feel you have the skills to be able to do that subject well, then we'll work with you.
Yeah, a lot of people I talk to say this is what's going on at work at the moment, so I want to take this subject.
Yes.
And that's really cool. I like that.
And we might say, well, maybe you're trying to run before you can walk. Yes, I know those are big issues, but maybe you need to step back and think about the picture before you take action, and learning the stuff behind it might help you take action. But then in other occasions, we'll say, yeah, go for it. You know, that's really important for you. So it's about knowing you and the nuances. Yes, so in terms of, this could change from session to session because we do change, but this is an example of the current sessions assessments. So business presentation. So business, when we get into that sort of higher level, we're often about pitching ideas or pitching concepts, putting forward strategies. So to be able to present on something is actually a really useful business skill. So the first assessment in this particular case is a business presentation on an issue related to social sustainability. So it might be about improving the business performance or taking a more ethical practice or something like that. And then there'll be a case analyst business report, and that could be on a range of different things. In this case, it's about a merger and integration and, you know, some of the conflicting values. So there it's crossing things like business strategy, business culture, human relations management, so and also organisational structure and organisational theory. So there's a lot in that particular assessment task, but you'd be stepped through that and you're given some guidance and suggestions on how to address it. The elevator pitch is these ongoing things that happen throughout the subject. So every topic there's an elevator pitch. So it says you've got 5 minutes with your boss to convince her about this issue. What would you say? And so you put that up, and you put that up in a forum, and then other students can see yours and might be able to comment on it, or there may be discussions around a particular case study that you share with other students. So yeah, that's just an example. It may not be like that when you do it, but that's just an example from this session. We do change our assessments from time to time. It's a good practice.
Yeah, study load, how much work, which is probably the most common thing we say, is people go, well, I'm going to take the plunge. How much time do I need to put aside? Now, the university requires me to say 6 to 12 hours per subject per week. Kath, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I would say, will you do 6 hours a week? No, you won't. I know you won't. You might read the textbook for an hour. You might come to the online lecture with an hour, and you might sort of check the forums for an hour. That's 3 hours. And you do that over 12 weeks. That's 36 hours. Where's the rest of the time? So the difference is what you might do that on a weekly basis, but what will happen is your first assessment task might be worth 15%. You might spend like Friday 6 to 9 and all of Saturday preparing for that. So there's another 9 to 10 hours. So now we're up to 46. Next assessment task worth 35. You might need 2 weekends for that. So that's going to be 16 to 20 hours. So let's add on another 35 hours. Now we're up to 76, 80 hours roughly. And then, of course, you've got a third assessment task, which is probably going to take you a couple of weekends at least, you know, Friday, Saturday, Sunday. So another 40 hours. So now we're up to 120 hours. So that's how it really works out, like builds up. You're not every week going to be doing the same amount of time. I think success at university is about time management, to be honest.
Yep.
If you schedule in, you know when your assessments are due, you block out your weekends before it, and let your family and friends know you're not going to be available, then that's what works.
Yes, I certainly talking to graduates, that's the number one thing. They say, get your, as you said, your time management right, and the rest will take care of itself. Exams, Kath?
So we don't have a lot of exams in the sort of marketing management, human relations, leadership subjects. It's mainly assessment tasks which are workplace related.
Yep.
In accounting and finance, they do have a couple of exams. And how many do you have in the IT subjects?
Well, we tend to, as you saw in that example before, we tend to have an exam, but it's mainly to help you prepare for your certification. Because don't forget, I keep up with their multi-choice, so we really need you to get used to that mode. But it's not the be all and end all, and some of them don't have exams.
But Joel's asking about online exams, and I know all of IT Masters exams are online, and to a large extent CSUs as well.
Yeah, so if you do take the general MBA and you end up studying accounting and finance subjects, you will have to front up to an exam centre. We have exam centres all over the world, and generally you shouldn't have to travel more than half an hour, but if you are in a remote area of New South Wales or one of the states, then it may be an hour, but generally we try to get it as close to you as possible.
And it's well signposted as well.
Yeah.
And for the IT sit at home exams that came in beginning of last year, I believe all of them now have that option. Would you believe some people would rather go to an exam centre? I find that bizarre, but each their own.
Oh, I would.
Okay, there you go, guys. Bizarre.
I wouldn't trust my hardware at all.
I think we've got things to do that, but it's the same as Microsoft and that. Now you can sit at home, but they've obviously got some security measures there to make sure you're not reading anything, and a whole lot of things going on there. But it seems to be going pretty well.
Chris has asked that he's applied to the MBA computing a couple of weeks ago. Still waiting on an offer. I would say that you should follow up on that, because that seems to me a little bit long.
Yeah, well, I've got a record of all of this chat, so I'll follow up on all of those sorts of questions after this webinar. Thanks, Chris. One thing I'll say about this is just, again, that last point, it's okay to drop back or to take one subject or to take leave. You know, if it's getting too much, again, just get on the front foot, talk to us and say, this is what's going on. You know, we might be able to negotiate extensions, or we might be able to negotiate a leave of absence and make sure that you don't burn out. We'd much rather you take a little break and then come back to it rather than just drop the thing altogether.
What does it cost? It's $33.50 per subject. That's the same for the MBA?
Yeah.
Yep. Yeah. That becomes due at the beginning of each session. I can't give advice on whether it's tax deductible, but the regulations say if it's applicable to your work in your career, it should be tax deductible, but you'd need to get your advice on that. Just a word of warning there, we have a number of people come back and say their tax accountant has said it's not deductible and actually was, and they're getting confused with HECS, bachelors. These are what's called full fee.
Yeah. And
they're assuming that's a blanket, but it's not the case. These are full fee. They're definitely tax deductible, providing it's applicable. And it's not really to do with the cost, but there's census. Remember, 4 weeks into the subject, all of the subjects, you can pull out and we get your fees either refunded or you'd sit the subject later on. If you run into a subject you really just can't cope with, or lo and behold, I don't think it's the case, but it's you don't think is of much use, you can pull out of it and providing it's elective, you can do a different subject down the track. How do you pay for it? Everyone who's an Australian student, virtually all of them, use fee help. This is a government study loan. Pretty simple stuff. When you put your application in, they'll ask you how you want to pay for it, and you tick the box and the government pays the uni on your behalf. That's the good news. The bad news is you do have to actually pay it back. But it's interest-free and indexed to CPI, which is not much these days. It covers all your fees and the 25% undergraduate loan. This is the bachelor. Again, people get confused with this. There is no loan fee with this. It's full fee. And you need to check this. This might be a bit out of date.
Yeah, repayments. I think it is. Yeah, it's quite out of date. Yeah, so that initial threshold is closer to 50,000 now, and it starts at sort of 1 or 2% up to a maximum of 8. So.
Okay,
but you can find all of that information on the internet, of course.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so that would come out of your pay. Yep.
And tax when you do your tax. Okay.
Alrighty. So we can talk about entrance requirements. At least for the IT masters, we say we either have a bachelor degree or industry experience. Not necessarily the case that you need an undergrad. We have a program called the Graduate Certificate Pathway, which is quite literally just the first 4 subjects of your masters. You get automatic entry into the rest of the masters if you're keen to continue on with it, and you even get a 10% discount as you're technically CSU alumni.
I've got this. Yes, would you believe? the Census Data, and I'll cover that a bit later on, just over half of the people in the IT industry don't have a degree. And it's got no correlation to where, well, it has got a direct correlation at the higher levels. Definitely, you'll see more and more degrees as you get higher up in the industry. And again, I'll show you some fascinating stats there. So I mentioned that first intake we had with the 242 applicants, but we had 120 something of them didn't have a undergraduate degree, and the university's a bit horrified. They said, "Look, what's going on?" And what used to happen in those days, they basically said, "Sorry, you're not." This was back in 2002. You can't start. And I looked at a few of them, and they were superstars in the industry. So today, fortunately, we've got a better setup. We have what's called the graduate certificate pathway, and Kath, you would have the same in the...
Yeah, absolutely. So what we're looking at is that you have a level of experience where you're in a decision-making capacity. So you could be leading teams, or you may not be, but you are making discretionary judgments. You are showing some sort of leadership and some capacity to, develop your career further. So that's what we're looking at. We'll look at your whole CV. And so generally we do favour some post-secondary studies. So if you've done a Cert 4, if you've done a diploma, or you've done some industry-based certifications, and it's always good to include those on your CV, because we're looking at the whole person. We're not looking at just one or two aspects.
We, for the technical stuff and the MBA computing, we're normally, to go to the grad cert, we'd normally look for 2 years industry experience. Fascinating, if you look at the prize winners, we have a prize in each of the different masters, or the top performing students. Guess where they come from? They're non-degree students who win most of the prizes, and I think maybe they've got something to prove or whatever it is, but they do, once they start, they seem to do very well. That's been our experience. All right, I think there's a slide now on the graduate certificate. Okay, so this is how it works. It's you apply for the Masters or the grad cert, but apply for the Masters and we say, look, you don't have an undergraduate degree, but the good news is we got something I think is better actually than going straight into the Masters. We'll start you in a graduate certificate, and it might be a graduate certificate in project management, or it might be a graduate certificate in commerce in the MBA. What a fantastic pathway that is. Or it might be the graduate certificate in business administration computing underlying it. And providing you pass, you would then move into your master's part of it. And the great news is you get full credit for what you've already done. What you need to be careful of here is to pick the subjects in your graduate certificate that are in the master's. In other words, if you do something else and then want to get credit for it, it's got to be one of the subjects, at least one of in the electives or the thing. So just be a bit careful there, but we'll give you a recommended pathway. And all I'd suggest, if you want to move from the pathway, you certainly can, but just check before you do, because that's most unfortunate. So what you end up is, out of that, 2 fully accredited postgraduate qualifications on your resume. In Kath's case, you'd have a Master of Business Administration, in brackets specialisation, and you'd have a graduate certificate in commerce.
Yeah, and you can even so you could do the graduate certificate in commerce, come into the MBA, but then after 4 more subjects, say I want to take out the graduate diploma, so you can do that and continue studying, and then after an additional 4 more, you could then get a master's, so you could get 3 qualifications.
You get 3, so yep.
In 12, with 12 subjects, yeah. Okay,
and then the MBA computing you'd have 2, because we don't have a graduate diploma, which is a stepping stone in the middle there. Maybe we should. Interesting. So it articulates to the corresponding with full credit providing you pick the right. Well, you get your qualification in only 8 months, because it's only 4 subjects and normal load is 2 subjects per trimester, 3 semesters a year. So you can have that on your resume very quickly. 4 subjects, and in our case, the alumni, you would become alumni in the graduate certificate.
Yeah.
So it actually, you get a 10% discount on the rest of your masters. So what's the downside? There isn't any. It's been embarrassing. Usually there's always a downside to things, But I would, even if I wanted to do the masters, I would go down this path personally.
Oh, you can start in the masters, and then after 4 subjects, you can
Take the grad cert.
exit and continue studying.
Yeah.
So that's the terminology we use. So you exit with a graduate certificate and continue studying. You do have to pay $200 to do that, to exit and continue studying. But given that you'll get a 10% discount on your next 8 subjects, it's definitely worth paying that $200.
Or you could start the grad cert and you wouldn't have to pay the $200.
Exactly, yeah.
The only reason I hear people say I'd prefer to keep the masters is they want to put it on their CV that they're studying the masters at the time, and that's always a really good thing to have on the CV. But as far as I'm concerned, you can say I'm studying a masters via the grad cert pathway. And do it anyway.
Okay, I hope that makes sense. As I say, it sounds a bit too good to be true, but I can assure you it is.
Yeah, so next we'll talk about credit, and it says here graduating in only 8 months, but that's assuming that you don't actually have any credit as well, because you can get up to 50% credit for degrees. So, for example, someone who was talking in chat, Martin actually, was talking about whether the grad cert you need to do core subjects. They have a slightly different structure, and again, that's where it's really important to make sure you talk with us and sort of we work out a study plan to figure out where you're going to go for the rest of the masters. But you do get to choose your subjects there as well. But for example, if you have a couple of industry certifications, you can earn a couple of credits towards a graduate certificate, and in one study session complete your postgrad award before moving on to the rest of the masters. So yeah, conceivably you could get it done in 3 months, which is...
If you can get that 50% credit, it's a real bonus.
Yeah. So there's quite a few ways to get credit. Industry certifications or previous academic studies. If you're in the MBA computing or another IT masters course, you can do 3 of our free short courses, similar to the ones that we're doing with Kath at the moment, and we'll award a credit to one of the elective subjects.
And a new one that's just been introduced is the Australian Computer Society certification. Australian Computer Society, you obviously have members of levels of membership when you join, but you can now, they have their own certification. What's it called? Certified Computing Professional?
Professional or Certified Technologist.
Yes. So there's credit available. The good news there is it's not an exam. They actually interview you. You have to pay for it, but there's an exam that they interview, and based on what's called SOPHIA, which is the framework of IT skills, a global framework, they then rate you at 1 of 2 levels, or possibly no level, depending on your experience and what you're actually doing. So I just went through the process myself, so I know about it. It was quite enjoyable, actually. And apparently I'm at a professional level, mainly because of my management, IT management experience. And as I said, quite enjoyable process. So have a look at that. Again, Guy can help you with that. Or you can go up on our website, but probably Guy can talk to you. If you're interested in credit, and even if you're not, I think you should do this anyway, just to find out. You never know. Fill out Am I eligible form on the IT Masters website. 5 minutes, probably take it.
What about CSU? What fairly similar story? Academic studies?
Fairly similar story. Prior academic studies. Industry certifications is, I mean, obviously for computing, we would work with IT Masters in the IT school at Sturt. So, and I know we all also give credit for a couple of the Prince 2 qualifications, but yeah, I would encourage everybody to ask.
Yes.
If you ask, you might get a yes. If you don't ask, then you don't get anything.
Or just fill the form out. As I say, it's, we get like 1,300 of these a year, and there's no, it's just fill them out and we come back. Quite often it'll be Guy. They basically will come back to you and say, yep, that's a credit. No, that isn't. You could do this if you wanted to, fast track your masters and cut down on the number of subjects you want to do.
Paul sent in in the chat, what's the turnaround time with that process? Because he's put one in on Monday and hasn't had a response. So I aim for the same day, Paul, and I'm real sorry. I've been offering some scholarships, which is some of the nice stuff I get to do for the last couple of days. But I'll get around to yours fairly soon.
That's disgraceful, Guy.
I know.
What are you doing?
I'm sorry, Paul. Please have more credits. I'm conscious of the time. We've only got a few slides left. Let's go into sort of talking about why you do an MBA.
Okay, this is from the latest Census Data, Australian Census Data. There's lots of surveys out there, and most of them I don't take any notice of them because they're self-serving. This is the actual data from the government, and I don't tend to fib in my census because it's government data and possibly cross-referenced against your taxation. And so what they do ask you in your census is what your job is, how much you earn, whether you've got what qualifications you've got. So it's fantastic data to find out, is there any difference between having a degree or not having a degree? How many people have got a degree? That, as I mentioned before. So what I've got there is the data from the latest census showing how much on average a programmer, for instance, is earning and how much a programmer with a university degree is earning. And there's a difference. That was good news. I maybe wouldn't be showing you if there wasn't any difference. or certainly wouldn't be showing you if it went down. And then if you multiply it by 25 years, there's a difference that you would in your earnings over that amount of time. Which would say this is a great return on investment. You're going to cost you, depending on your credit, 30, 35,000 to do your masters. It keeps giving and giving. An MBA, rightly or wrongly, doesn't date. I still use mine from 25 years ago on my resume. So
yeah, that's true. Yeah.
And the big earners there, of course, are IT management. Now, interesting enough, again, the stats show nearly 50% of IT managers don't have a degree, which I find amazing. But there's a big difference in what they're earning. That's where you can directly see it. And there's a kind of a glass ceiling. I had it in Telstra. I went for my first executive role and didn't even shortlist. And I thought I should have owned the job. By the way, I could have eaten it, I thought. And the HR person eventually shared with me that I wasn't on the shortlist because I didn't have a degree. And a lot of corporations do this, bigger corporations, Microsoft, I've seen it. So all I'm saying there, if you're sitting out there and you don't have one, you're going to move up in the industry. You're going to need it eventually. It's going to hurt you. So what I did, by the way, was started my MBA and then put in progress on my resume, and it worked beautifully. I suddenly got on shortlist, and it worked even better because we had good discussions at the interviews about how my MBA was going and how applicable it was to work and how much I was enjoying it. And so there's a bit of a thing for you there, is to say you don't have to wait to the end of your study to use this stuff. I think it works better while you are studying. Certainly the discussions went really well at the interviews. So you stick in progress after your MBA, like we talked about before. Maybe get a couple of subjects under your belt, because it could be embarrassing if you hadn't even started. But I would certainly start leveraging it straight away. And it does definitely have an impact. Kath, any thoughts there?
So some of the people are putting up questions about whether that's just a degree and not postgraduate or undergraduate. What I can say is I try and track down all of the currently enrolled students in the MBA on LinkedIn and connect with them.
Yep.
And that for me is a great source of information about, where they are working and how their careers are tracking. And so generally I see that most of them will progress during the period that it takes them to complete their degree. And that's not even like following up afterwards. So I think the thing is that, what somebody else asked, what's the benefit if I'm already got an undergraduate? What's the benefit of me doing an MBA or already got a master's? Well, I don't think that you can ever discount the value of learning. And as long as you're taking learning that's relevant to your career and your workplace, then you're always going to apply it, and it'll make you more effective and more confident and more, I suppose, informed about your decision making. And so therefore you'll see that in your practice, and your colleagues and superiors will hopefully notice that. And so I think, you just grow as a person. You don't magically change the day you graduate. The growing happens during the process, doesn't it?
Yes, I mean, it gave me a level of confidence, which I wasn't expecting. And for instance, that interview, we were going through a restructure, and I could talk about the different theories behind restructures and the different ways you can set it up and what the impact of that was. And they were quite, the CEO was, CIO it was in those days, he was quite impressed with some of the concepts behind it. Just to clarify that, sorry, I should have had that on. That's degree. In other words, they haven't got a university qualification that says you don't have a degree. And whereas the other numbers are with a degree, whether it be bachelor or master's. There is a difference. I haven't got them here. There is a difference between having an undergraduate degree and a postgraduate, but it is much smaller. And I doubt, I don't even know how you track it. I don't know that'd be, if you're adding more masters on top. Look, I definitely agree with Kath. It'd be valuable, and we've got so many people who are doing their third, fourth. We had one guy do 7. Because they just enjoyed the study. And but there's definitely a group. By the way, I pulled the same data from Australian Bureau of Statistics for marketing and for law enforcement. And it was almost the same. There was a significant difference. And I saw a thing in American, which was much the same as well. So there is a, why it's different, that's an interesting question.
Yeah.
I think I've got a
I would argue because you grow and develop as a person, because you've been exposed to different thinking and different concepts and different philosophies. So you look at things with a different lens, and that makes you a better
Someone should do their doctorate on it. Just if you go down, I think, have I got the slide on that?
Maybe somebody else.
No, I had a slide in there once. It was just a discussion point. Is it because of what you learned? We'd like to say it was. Is it because of the resume effect, which I talked about before? You've got an MBA on your resume, you're suddenly getting interviews you wouldn't have got, and that type of thing. I mean,
or is it self-selecting? The people that are likely to apply for an MBA are more likely to go for the bigger jobs and a more ambitious sort of person anyway.
And quite frankly, it will take motivation to finish this.
Yeah.
And so that says something about them as well. So I think it'd be a combination of all three. But what percentages it would be?
Well, that's when we do the data analysis subjects. Paul asks, have we seen people move from technical roles to management roles by leveraging the MBA? Absolutely, yes. In fact, we're going to be having a discussion with Craig Ford about that in the next few weeks. One of the people who has actually been through the process of doing a second master's and sort of talking about, how it has affected their career and ability to apply for different types of jobs. It really does depend on what your objectives are and what sort of narrative you want to tell people in the interview. You can go from management to technical, no worries at all as well.
I spent a lot of time in IT management and talked to a lot of people about this. They're in technical roles and hit a ceiling, which is most unfortunate. You get to a ceiling where they won't pay you anymore. The boss has always got to get paid more, than ridiculous as it is. And so they moving over to management. And I think what hurt them was lack of skills when they first went into the role, and it certainly hurt me. In other words, you didn't know what a budget was, and you had never worked with one. You didn't understand the strategy stuff, structural, all that type of stuff. So that's when it can really, and if you can tie it in as much as possible to that, especially the core stuff. Finance, I know we all hate it, but my God, you need it. It hurt me badly when I moved into, you go to your first meeting and they'll seem to know what they're talking about and you don't, it's difficult. So, okay, when can you start? For the MBA computing, you have 6 intakes per year now, would you believe? We used to have 3 and now we've got extras. The next one, Guy, is?
In March.
Yes, March.
Yeah. Oh, March, yes.
First week of March is that we've got 3 major intakes through the year, 1 in March, 1 in July, 1 in November. IT Masters, we have a couple of subjects available sort of in between those major intakes where we sort of go for the sort of easing you into study style subjects, cybersecurity fundamentals, project management fundamentals, contemporary management, which we were talking about today, just to sort of say, all right, well, let's get you comfortable with, I guess, the process of studying, and then you can sort of ramp it up from there or keep going. It really is when it's best for you. Again, as far as I'm concerned, it's always about making sure we're flexible and keeping open lines of communication, just to make sure that we're setting you up for success and to make sure that everyone gets something out of it. Don't want to set people up to smash themselves. And on that, I love talking about, putting together good study plans and making sure the study plan is congruent with your, I guess, objectives. So please do get in touch. Either call me on that number or the email address. If you don't get me straight away, you'll get through to me eventually. And that goes for people interested in both the MBA computing and otherwise. And Kath and I can talk and talk you through whichever one you're most interested in. Thanks heaps for staying with us. I know we've gone pretty long, and I'm sorry for that for those of you that were on lunch. Hopefully the extra information you'll be able to listen to if you had to leave on the recording. We've got a lot of questions as well. So we'll try and whip through a few of those at the moment. If you need to leave, that's not a problem. You can hopefully pick it up on the recording. We'll send that around to everyone. But yeah, Kalyani has asked when the next enrollment is this year. And as we said, that's in March, but you can do it whenever you like, whenever works best for you. Is this MBA accredited from Daniel?
So I'm going to ask Daniel what accreditation he's interested in, because there's probably 6 or 7 different accreditations that you can apply for your MBA program. Obviously, the good news in Australia is that, you know, the government accredits our qualifications. So Australia has a very standardised system of education, and you can be sure that any masters that you undertake in Australia will be at the Australian Qualifications Framework Level 9.
Yeah. Excellent. So if you have any more to add to that, Daniel, feel free to send that in. Joel has asked, I'm doing my grad cert in information system security. Will this be fine? Yeah, absolutely fine. It'll certainly qualify you for access to it because you've got a postgraduate award. So entry-wise, no problems at all. And more than likely, we'll be able to get you a couple of credits to the cybersecurity specialization stream, or you could just use them in your generic stream. Let's talk about the scholarships which I was awarding. So I'll be in touch with everyone about that in due course. I've got to go through that whole list. There's a bunch of amazing candidates. So if you haven't heard from me yet, it's probably good news.
Okay. Okay. Yep.
Yep. So is that?
I think you're talking about the AA, CSB and the European one. So the AA CSB is the American one, then there's a European one, and then I think you're talking about AMBER. Are you? Equus, yep. So, yeah. So, no, we haven't. I'm looking at AMBER, and we definitely aligned our MBA to AMBER when we revised it in 2016. So we looked at the AMBER, requirements for an MBA, and we aligned our MBA with that, but we haven't gone to the next level, which is getting accreditation yet.
Just a comment on that. I think these sort of accreditation schemes are important within universities. I must admit I haven't come across an employer that asked for them or knew of them.
Nah.
So I would check that. I don't take my word for it. Check, talk to your boss and that, and say, is this important to have? It certainly is important within university themselves, the accreditation schemes.
It is quite, I mean, the MBA has been around since the 1960s, and some of them are quite traditional in their approach as well about what constitutes an MBA, and they are very much geared for that 1 year or on-campus model, which is quite a different cohort to what we have.
I mean, we're not accredited by the Australian Computer Society, and when we first started, they said you can't be successful without, it's the bee's knees. The issue was that they've got requirements, and I don't disagree with them, but we wanted to go a different way. We wanted to make it more totally technical, and we didn't want to have to include ethics and database when they were studying cybersecurity and things like that. So we didn't, and look at the numbers. You saw that slide. They voted with their feet. Not that I'm saying the ACS I'm a member and I think they're fantastic, but it's not the be all and end all in terms of, it's up to the employer in the end.
And as Daniel says, it might be sector specific. He said financial industry is very picky about prestige.
Oh, yes.
So, yeah, absolutely. Some areas that
absolutely
be the case.
And that you might go to a different financial organisation and find they're not as picky. So it could just be the culture of that particular environment, because somebody got their MBA from one that had, one of those accreditations. So they think that that's the most important.
Ruben's asked a couple of questions about credit, and Ruben, I'll call you later. I need to talk to you anyway. Do I need to prove a level of English if I'm a non-speaking background? Generally, yes.
Just a word on the process there. We've updated the process. We'll have a talk to you. We can apply for a waiver. We're very careful about it because as we need to be. So what we do is talk to you on the phone, and if your English is, we believe, we would record that, and you'd also there's a short submission about your written skills. So yes, there are waivers available, but there is a few more steps to it.
Oh, and Jack's put a very helpful post up there. As an alternative to ACS, I found the ITPA has accepted the CSU Masters program.
Oh, I'll look into that. Thank you for that. I wasn't aware of that. I know the ITPA pretty well, but I'm not up to date with them, so I'll have a look at it.
Alrighty. Vihangi he's enrolled in a Masters in IT with CSU. Would you and he's asked, can I transfer into this? And almost certainly the answer would be yes, if you're eligible into the Master in IT.
Yeah.
The question is just whether it's in your best interests and whether it is actually fitting with your objectives out of the course. So that's something you can get in touch with us with, and we'll talk about that. Thanks, Daniel, for all the information. Alrighty, and anonymous attendee has asked, I have a master's in telecoms engineering. Can I get any credit from that? With postgrad qualification, with postgrad history, I should say, we tend to need an 80% overlap in content, and we can make that assessment. You know, once you've applied and you're going through the process, we'll have a look at the subjects that you've done at other institutions and sort of see whether we can find something for you. It's not necessarily a one-for-one swap. You know, if you've done three subjects on a particular area that each covers about 30% of the subject that we're offering, we can award it for that. But it's a bit of a laborious process, but something that we just need to get on the phone and talk about.
What CSU do though is we'll award credit where there's a number of unis I've gone to and talked to, and they just put you through an enormous process and generally knock you back. But if it's justified, they're not going to make you study stuff you already know.
Yeah.
So I think you'll find us pretty good that way.
We try. We try to give credit.
Yeah.
If we can't, we can't, but we try. Our philosophy is we'll try and give credit where we can.
Yeah. John's just chucked in the chat, can someone please call when you have the time? And yes, I absolutely will, John. Anyone else who wants a call, we're about to wrap up here. So just chuck a me please in the chat or something like that, and I'll give you a call and find out what your situation is and see how we can be of assistance. I'll go through the chat as well, and I'll probably send a chat log in an email with the recording and links to all of the resources that we've got here associated with this webinar, so you can look through that. I'll answer any questions in there that I've missed throughout the course of the webinar, and apologies if I haven't got to you. You've all been very patient and very nice, and there was about 100 people flowing through it in the webinar, I think maximum of 75 at one time. So thanks everyone. If you have any questions, send them in. It's been a really nice time. And thanks Kath and Martin for coming in and telling us everything about it.
You make sure you get back to those people, guys. I don't want to hear.
If I don't, you just email Martin and he can crack the whip. That'll be fine. All right, everyone. Well, thanks so much. Have a good rest of the day. Hope we haven't taken up too much time of your lunch and work day. But hope you've got something out of it.
If you end the meeting, they won't be able to ask any more questions, will they?
Yeah, I'm ending now.
Okay, all right.
Any questions, send them in, folks. Thanks so much. Thanks, everyone.
All right.